guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be reacting to scary stories. Okay, guys, could you please smash that subscribe button and that like button? So, okay, let's get started.
About 5 years ago, I worked at a job where I would finish late and end up driving home around 1 in the morning. Most of the route I took was in the countryside surrounded by woods. I drove past quite a few people who needed help, so I always had jumper cables, spare gas, and other tools I might need in my car. One rainy night, when I was driving home, I noticed a parked car on the side of the road with their hazard lights on. I pulled over in front of their car and got out to see what was the problem. When I got out, two young men in their 20s stepped out. I asked them what the problem was, and one of the men said their car wouldn't start and asked if I could help them. I don't know what it was, but I instantly felt on edge around these guys, like I needed to be on guard or something.
Why are you just helping these random people? Like, who does that? Why would you just help a random person?
I asked one of them to open the hood. I expected one of them to go back in the car and pop the hood. However, one of them just sort of signaled someone in the car. That's when I really looked into the car and noticed there were two more people inside. That's when I felt like something was really wrong. I opened the hood and took a quick look. I noticed one of the men gave a nod to the other men in the car. I was believing my instincts at that point and that something bad was about to happen. I quickly thought up an excuse to get back into my car. I said to them that I think I knew what the problem was. I would just go back to my car and get the tool that I needed. I walked back to my car trying to look normal. I remember thinking one of the men was going to attack me from behind.
So they just look at you like that? Do you see that eye and those eyes? What? Okay. That's weird.
When I got close to my car, I quickly got inside and started my car and drove away. I'm glad I knew it was a trap because shortly after, a car came speeding down the road behind me. Of course, it was the car claiming to be broken down. The man driving kept turning into my car, almost making contact. One of the men opened their window and was throwing what I guessed was loose change and junk at my car. The same guy throwing things then pulled out a knife and started scratching and stabbing at the windows, causing them to chip and crack. The driver turned his car into mine, this time making contact. I had to turn my car into theirs just so I wouldn't crash off the side of the road. I slammed on my brakes and so did they shortly after.
That is crazy. And look at his mouth. Okay.
And got out of the car and started running toward mine. At that point, though, I had already started driving and drove past them in the car. I don't know if I lost them or if they just gave up, as I didn't see them again after that. I've never feared for my life as much as I did that moment. About 3 days later, I read on the news that two men had been robbed and severely beaten by a group of men who claimed that their car was broken down. I'm glad I trusted my instincts and knew to leave.
How would you know that? Like, does your body, like, know the future, but your brain does not know the future? Well, your brain does know the future, but you don't think, well, never mind. A new one.
This story happened about 5 years ago. My dad had recently retired, and we had always talked about touring the United States. We bought a third-hand RV and began our road trip around America. We were about halfway through our journey, and so far we had no problems and enjoyed all the places we visited. The RV had a few problems being third-hand, but nothing too serious that we couldn't fix on the side of the road. We were driving late in the evening around 10 o'clock when the RV started to make noises. That was usually an indication to us that we needed to get out and make a few adjustments. We pulled into a parking lot next to a bar and took a look, and I suggested that we take a little break and had a drink in the bar. As we were walking towards the bar, I noticed there were motorcycles parked outside.
Is it me or you guys are twins? Like, you're telling me you don't look like twins? I'm gonna change it to black. Black. What if I color the black back? Black. I said back. Okay.
It actually looked like a motorcycle gang was hanging around. We were in the bar and we had some food and drinks. At one point, I looked around the bar and I noticed two men who were in motorcycle jackets pointing in our direction. The two men approached us and aggressively told us that we were in their parking spot and needed to move. I knew my dad was going to say something, but I interrupted him before he could speak and said to the two men that we'll move our RV. I wasn't going to cause trouble. These men looked dangerous, and there were more outside. We paid the bill and we left the bar. As we were outside, I remember that we hadn't quite fixed the RV yet. I told my dad to wait inside and I will finish adjusting the RV so we could get back on the road as soon as possible. One of the men who approached us earlier asked why we weren't going yet. I told him that the RV had some problems and I needed to fix it. The man told me in a very stern voice that we better be going in 5 minutes. He made a point of revealing his handgun as he said this. I quickly finished the RV and we got going again. While we were driving, I heard motorcycles loudly behind us. One bike sped up and got in front of us while the other one surrounded the RV. I didn't understand why they were after us. We did everything they said and they were still harassing us. I knew the men were armed, and if we stopped, we were probably going to get hurt or worse. I told my dad to continue driving no matter what. I tried calling the police, but I couldn't get through. My dad said just to keep calling them until they pick up, so that's what I continued to do. The RV started to make noises again, and it wasn't long before the engine cut out, and we had no choice but to stop. The men got off their bikes and started approaching the RV, but for some reason they quickly turned around, got on their bikes, and drove away. My dad pointed in front, and he said, "There's the police." We saw flashing lights coming down the road. I got out on the side of the road just to try to stop the police car, but as it got closer, I saw it was an ambulance. The flashing blue and red lights were enough to scare the bikers away. Me and my dad decided to let it go. We fixed the RV and continued our trip. I'm to this day grateful that the blue and red flashing lights saved me and my dad from probably death.
Oh my god. Sorry, there was an ad.
This story happened a long time ago when I was in my late teens. I had recently got my first car and I would always drive my friends and I around, usually to a bar called Frank's Bar that our friend Peter's father owned. It had pool tables and darts there, so that's where we hung out most of the time. One night, like most nights, I was driving some friends to the bar. Said to not let them over. During the drive, a man started driving close to my car, beeping his horn and trying to overtake me. One of my friends said to not let him over in order to annoy him. I didn't let him pass. My friends and I laughed at the man's frustration. For some reason, the man slammed on his brakes, nearly crashing into a barrier on the side of the road. We continued to laugh. Then we arrived at Frank's Bar. We had dinner, played pool, and had a few drinks. As Peter's dad owned the bar, we would always stay late past closing time. My other friends had left a little earlier that night, so it was just me and Peter. It was midnight when I decided it was time to head home. I said bye to Peter and his dad, and I left the bar. When I got outside, I expected my car to be the only one in the parking lot, but there was another car parked near mine. A man was standing outside his car, sipping on a liquor bottle, watching me. I knew right away it was the man that nearly ran off the road. I kept my head down, trying not to make any eye contact, and I got into my car. When I got in and started my car, so did the man. I drove off down the road, and so did the man following me close behind. I barely got down the road when the man started aggressively tailgating me. He drove up beside me, waving his hands at me. It looked like he wanted me to pull over. I wasn't going to, and I continued driving and looked away. The man started beeping his horn, and when I looked back at him, he was holding a handgun, pointing it right at me. My instinct was to drive faster, and the man accelerated as well. I saw my mirror, and the man somehow lost control of his car, causing him to swerve. I didn't see what exactly happened as I was focusing on the road, concentrating to driving fast and to get away from this guy. I didn't see that man again that night, and from then on, I always worried when I went back to Frank's bar that I would see that man again. Thankfully, I never did.
We're watching another one. Okay. So, let's get started.
When I was 10, my parents divorced. My mother left the house and disappeared. A few years later, my father married my stepmother. She was a very beautiful person and sweet as an angel to me. Being that she worked as a nurse, she used to take care of me whenever I got sick. I started to open up to her, and it seemed like we were becoming a real family. Until an incident happened. About 1 year later, I started to get sick. It was weird. I could feel my body was getting weaker and weaker. As always, my stepmother took care of me with all of her heart. However, something felt different. Sitting next to me while I was laying in bed, she took something out of her bag. The first thing that caught my eye was a syringe. She said she would inject me with a tonic to get better soon. To this day, I get goosebumps whenever I think of what she said, and how she said it with a smile.
I am an angel, and I'll send you to heaven. You won't hurt anymore.
After hearing that, I refused it because it felt really weird. She then kept saying it was okay and even forcibly tried to give me the injection.
You need a shot now!
Being scared, I kept saying I didn't want it. I eventually jumped up from the bed and ran away. She then shouted loudly from behind, chasing me with a syringe in her hand.
You can't go to heaven if you...
Oh my god, do you see her face? Look at that. And her teeth look like a rabbit teeth. Oh, wait, I'm covering it. See this? See? Oh, it's not working. Okay. It looks like, see that? That looks like a rabbit teeth. Rabbit teeth, not rabbit. Oh.
Rejected like this?
I ran away screaming like crazy. Just then, my father came into my room when he heard my scream and shouted at her. She screamed and rushed at him.
It's time for you to leave too.
She then put the needle in his throat. However, he managed to block her and knock her to the floor just before she injected it into his body. Later, my father immediately called the police and she was arrested at the scene. Being terrified, there was nothing I could do but just flop on the floor. It turned out that she tried to inject us with a drug that kills people. The cops told me that if I had taken the shot, I'd probably be dead by now. The investigation found that she was suffering from severe depression and mental illness. Also, it turned out that she had been putting poison in the food which I ate over the past few weeks. In other words, I was dying slowly. I eventually recovered after the treatment, but I still suffer from the fear of that day. I'm sure you're all curious at this point. What could be the reason she tried to kill me? Well, I'm the one who's most curious about that reason. All I could say is that when she was taken away that day, she stared at me and hummed a song with a freakish, chilling smile.
Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door.
That is creepy. And that's the end of today's video. Please like and subscribe. If you didn't like today's video, if you did like today's video, hit the subscribe and hit the like button if you like today's video. And if you want to get notifications, hit that bell so you can get notifications every time I make a new video. Bye.